What are you hearing from the insurance company on the home?
Me personally?
Yeah.
For our home?
Just in general, though. I mean, what are you hearing about where it's headed right now?
Well, we're hearing a lot of differences between what they're going to cover, from the wind and homeowners insurance compared to the FEMA flood insurance program. And considering only about 19% of Floridians and close to 30-ish% of Floridians in the affected coastal areas even have flood insurance, they're going to be gearing up for a big fight. They're going to be leaving consumers behind, and they're going to need consumer advocates to help them. And I don't know if you've seen in the news lately, Jimmy has been calling consumer advocates locusts and predators. Property insurance companies have insurance adjusters, they have lawyers, and Jimmy's trying to tell people to not get insurance adjusters or lawyers themselves, to just let themselves deal with the insurance company. They need representation. We need consumer representation to help people fight for what the claim should be paid, instead of just taking the first offer from the insurance company. Okay.
What's Ian doing to your campaign right now? And obviously the talk is you got a Democratic lineup for a cabinet that's all disappearing.
What do you mean we're disappearing? I haven't disappeared.
But not getting help from the party. Meanwhile, the RPOF, building away from here, is pumping thousands upon thousands to their people.
For this race, for the CFO's race, I personally have not disappeared. I was just in Miami and Palm Beach for 4 days. Earlier this week, we helped Charlie Crist gather supplies to bring down to Fort Myers just 2 days ago. This particular race, and I think there's a reason RPOF is pumping stuff out. They know that I'm on the right side of these issues. They know that Jimmy has helped exacerbate the property insurance crisis here in Florida, that not only have we seen coming down the road for years when he's done nothing, but now it is coming crashing down with what's happened with Hurricane Ian. We're up here specifically because tomorrow's the 4-year anniversary of Hurricane Michael. There are still buildings and still homes damaged and destroyed, waiting to have resolutions from insurance companies to this day, 4 years later. They know that we're on the right side of trying to fix property insurance. There's a special session for property insurance that Jimmy had little to no hand in or input to. What is he doing? We need to save people, the people in Florida. We need to save them money. That's what I'm after. I'm trying to take politics out of their money. I'm trying to save them money and make sure we have consumer advocates.
Right. So other than showing up here, I think the Sentinel, just did a story on it. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been much. Everything seems to go to DeSantis in the Crist race. How do you overcome that?
Just like Nikki Fried did in 2018, this race is going to be won in the margins. That's why we're spending 4 days here in the Panhandle, in Escambia and Santa Rosa and Walton and Bay and Gulf and Gadsden and Franklin counties and here in Leon County, because we can pick up votes in other places that other races cannot, especially places that have been affected by the property insurance crisis and by Jimmy's failure to protect people. I've done events where I was the only Democrat in the room with 40 to 50 Republicans. By the end of it, after we've had the discussion, they all said they were voting for me. Motivating voters by these kitchen table issues, by their wallets, is extraordinarily effective. And again, we're on the right side of these issues, and as soon as we're able to tell people that, we have great response from both sides of the aisle.
A couple editorial board type questions. What made you decide to run for this office?
There's a lot that went into it. When I very first ran in 2018 for the state legislature, I ran because there are a couple of reasons, but one of the big reasons was nobody else was willing to do it. And there was a bully in our district that needed to be stood up to. Just like when I volunteered to join the Navy, I was commissioned 3 weeks before September 11th. I volunteered for the submarine force. I volunteered for a combat tour in Iraq at the height of the Second Gulf War. I was about 30 miles away when Saddam Hussein was executed. Went on over 200 combat missions when I was in Iraq. And then when people needed someone to stand up for them and fight for them in my state house district, I felt kind of duty bound to try. And even though it was an R+9 seat, we worked our tails off and we flipped the district by 12 points, and I became the first Democrat to represent Eastern Hillsborough over 20 years. Then kind of similarly, I was really planning on sitting 2022 out, but I started getting, just like in 2018, I started getting calls from all over the state. We need somebody to stand up for us. We need a strong candidate who's willing to take this on, to talk about the issues, and to stand up for Floridians. And and it's that duty kind of heartstring that always pulls on me, that my father ground into me when I was a kid. He volunteered for a combat tour in Vietnam in 1967. So it's hard for me to say no when that duty calls and people ask me to serve.
Day 1 month in, you win. What do you see you can achieve?
With the Office of Insurance Regulation, we need new leadership. We need to look into what the regulations that they put in place extra legislatively, like for example, ponying up citizens' property insurance as the backstop for private insurance companies in a non-legislative fashion. That's putting the bill on every single insurance policyholder in the entire state. Is that the right move? Is that legal to do? We can dig into why we've had 6 property insurance companies go insolvent this year alone, and others leave the state. So far, Jimmy's office has done 0 of the legally required postmortems on why. They don't know why companies are leaving the state. We can dig into that to figure out the actual root cause, just like we did in the Navy. You did a root cause analysis. You ask why 4 or 5, 6 times, so you can't ask why anymore, and you get to that root cause. And that's the problem that you attack. Right now, Jimmy has no idea what's actually wrong with property insurance in Florida because he has not asked.
What do you think needs to be changed?
So there's a few things. So you remember 12, 14 years ago when they closed the loopholes on sinkholes? Similarly, there are, Jimmy keeps talking about fraud with roofs. If I remember correctly, they've done about 1,800 investigations on fraud. They've done less than 14 prosecutions. Not only that, every single one of those investigations was handed to them by insurance companies' special investigative units. They didn't even do them themselves. And they were all focused on consumers. I talked to a couple in Bay County after Hurricane Michael. Their home was completely destroyed. The insurance company offered them $12,000 to rebuild their entire house. It took 2.5 years, and lawyers and public adjusters to get them the full $317,000 value of their home, which the property insurance company should have done right at the very beginning. There's just so much that needs to be affected. We need somebody who wants to actually do the job of the CFO, not just have the title.
Is there anything you think you can do unilaterally? I mean, obviously, most stuff does need the legislature.
Well, the current Office of Insurance Regulation seems to be doing quite a bit unilaterally. So that's why you have a general counsel and a bevy of lawyers to see what we can do immediately to help relieve some of the economic burden on Floridians. Because our average property insurance premium has doubled in the past 3 years, and the property insurance premium, the average in Florida, is triple the national average. These costs are just getting out of control, and doing those postmortems, finding the loopholes that we need to close, and working with legislators to close them can be a win-win for everybody. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's not an independent issue. It's an every Floridian and your family and your wallet issue. And it's going to be like a 2, 3, 4-year project to fix property insurance in Florida.
How much do you see bringing someone like Jeff Brandes or some people on the other aisle?
You know what? You're not the first person to ask me that. And I've even mentioned Senator Brandes. He's been a voice of sanity and urgency when it comes to property insurance. And I was an independent until 2018, and when I was in the military, I didn't care if you were Army or Navy or Air Force or Marine Corps or Coast Guard or I guess Space Force now. If you had the right idea that's going to solve the problem, I'm more than happy to bring that in and use that and coordinate with those people to solve those problems. Be absolutely ecstatic to talk with Senator Brandes in the office at DFS when we went.
How long can citizens keep being the backstop?
That's a question over 1 million citizens policyholders are asking right now. It's projected to go up to over 1.7 million policies by the end of 2023, and shortly after over 2 million policies, which is not designed to do. So we'll see. Jimmy, by regulation, like I said, ponied it up as a backstop when, for private insurance companies if they're unable to pay claims or to pay their reinsurance. So Who knows when that's going to collapse? But after Ian, with a projected cost of between 20 and 50 billion, which we don't even know yet, it could be a lot closer, a lot sooner than people think.
I think we've talked on the phone about the migrant flights. And
Yes.
funding those. But what are your thoughts? Petronas has come out with a proposal about giving people in Florida more protections from IRS auditors. And
This is nothing but to stoke fear amongst Floridians. If you actually look at the bill, it brings staffing levels of the IRS back up.
The federal bill.
Yep, the federal bill.
Right.
Back up to where they were about 10 or 12 years ago. Because in the past decade, the IRS's budget has been gutted. Their current workforce is aging and will be retiring out. Most of these positions are support, admin, IT, that kind of staff. So really, when it comes down to it, when you want to get your tax return back, or if you have questions, you're going to get answers from the IRS much faster. It's, again, bringing them back up to the level of staffing that they had a decade ago. And when it, really bottom line, the IRS is a law enforcement agency. It's going to go after people who have been evading their tax. I pay my taxes. I'm sure you pay your taxes. Tom, I'm betting you pay your taxes. Why shouldn't everybody be held to that same standard? This is a law and order bill. I don't know why Jimmy Petronas is anti-law and order when it comes to this.
what about he's got proposals going after businesses with ESG?
So ESG, or environmental and social governance, Bloomberg did a study. Over 69% of CEOs in the United States identify as Republicans. Nearly to a person. They use ESG principles when investing because it has globally been proven to have a higher financial rate of return than not. So in this new rule that the cabinet put out, first off, we checked, the state has never used ESG when making an investment decision, so this is solving a problem that does not exist. Second, it goes against their fiduciary responsibility to Floridians. And third, if they even were following that rule, when Russia invaded Ukraine and the world came down on Russia with economic sanctions and everybody knew that their economy was going to tank, and when Democrats were pleading to divest our state retirement funds from Russia, he would have listened because he lost almost every penny of the $300 million of the Florida retirement fund that was invested in Russia. That's a financial decision that, per his new rule, required him to divest, but he did not. So you have to ask Jimmy why.
Why do you think he's doing these? The IRS, Ben Jerry's, ESG?
Because that messaging evokes fear and emotion in voters. And nothing is going to motivate a voter more, if you just look at base value, than fear and emotion. It's an age-old tactic of... My wife is in sales. So the best way to get somebody to make sure that they're going to buy whatever you're selling is to make them scared that somebody else is going to get it, or they're going to miss out, or something's going to happen if they don't. So he's using those fear tactics to try to scare people.
He's been up on the Hill since more than a decade. In the House, over Public Service Commission, his current job. Other than his seersucker suits, what has he done? You think, hey, that's actually a good idea. And I'm not counting the seersucker suit.
You're not counting the seersucker? Because personally, I know a lot of people that like seersucker. It looks horrible on me, so I'm not a big fan. You know, even though he's very recently come out with some very misleading and incorrect and patently false things talking about fire prevention, in the Navy, everybody on board a submarine is trained for shipboard firefighting, so I've a bit more experience than Jimmy does in this. But besides that, he has supported the emergency response teams fairly well, so I will give him that. But he actually, just these past 2 weeks, put out some egregiously wrong and misleading information that's potentially dangerous.
Such as?
Talking about electric vehicles being ticking time bombs, and how fire crews have to come up with new ideas and new ways to fight fire. That was 15 years ago, maybe. But these EVs have been on the road for 10, 12, 15 years. And firefighters know that their lives are on the line when they fight these fires. They've had these techniques for years. They know how to fight these fires. Not to mention, the battery compartments are airtight and watertight. And even on Jimmy's website, they shared a national fire prevention notice saying that fires may occur in higher or low voltage things in any vehicle but especially in EVs, it's highlighted. It says they are rare to uncommon. He's trying to, I don't know why he's doing this, if it's just trying to scare people, again, because of fear. If it's just showing people that he's against EVs, kind of in a roundabout way to get support from fossil fuels, I don't know. Or if it's pure ignorance. Either way, it's bad for everyday Floridians and bad for Florida and bad for fire safety.